Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm so glad to see everyone joining us. That was amazing. Can we just give it up to Taylor? Such an incredible bit of insight into the work that Taylor and Jarvis do and what a huge impact it has on campaigns. So we're here to talk a little bit about some of the programs that complement the electoral work that we do. Yesterday, hopefully you all were here for our strategy session where we focused on the first pillar of our strategy, which is winning elections. And today we want to tell you a little bit about some of the work in the other pillars. And that work is generally housed at Sister District Action Network. And I'm so excited to have Bela Tringali here as well, who's our wonderful program manager for many of the programs that we're going to talk about today. But just briefly, in terms of what we're going to cover. So yesterday we talked about the 4 general pillars of the strategy. The first is win elections. And then the second is support organizers. So we have our State Bridges program that Bela is going to tell us a bit more about. Then we have the support legislators pillar, right? Once folks are elected, what do we do to help them succeed? And then finally, the educate and empower pillar. So here we'll talk about our research program and our narrative change work as well. And again, the overarching idea here is we want to be additive to the landscape for state legislative work, both on the electoral side and the non-electoral side. And so all of these programs reflect our understanding and our work to really identify where the gaps are and where we can provide some value add to the ecosystem. So with that, I'm really excited to turn things over to Bela to tell us a little bit about State Bridges.
Thank you. Thanks, Gabby, and hello, everyone. So excited to talk about State Bridges today. So in 2021, Sister District launched State Bridges to complement our electoral work, like Gabby was saying, because the electoral gains we're fighting for would not be possible without supporting year-round organizing by grassroots partners on the ground who are often led by people of color and center the voices of those most impacted by state policies. So it's so important to support our grassroots partners through this program because we need to be making the case all year long to voters on the ground, not just during the elections cycle. Campaigns for candidates can't do everything. We need to be making the case all year long and connecting the dots by supporting these amazing grassroots organizations. And we choose our partners for the program based on how they can articulate that state legislatures are necessary and critical to their theory of change and to building power across their state. So our program activates all of our amazing volunteers across the country to fundraise for organizations leading this year-round power building work in their states. They are doing this work to progress candidates and causes in their communities and their states, contributing to long-term systematic change over time by investing in organizers and building these year-round relationships with voters on the ground. So go to the next slide. And so our State Bridges program lays the groundwork for these electoral victories in key states by supporting organizers. One, we have a quote from up here that I'd love you to check out from one of our amazing 2022 partners, Melvin Montford, who is the executive director of the North Carolina A. Philip Randolph Education Fund. That I think this quote really encapsulates what we're bringing to our partners through this program. We're not only raising crucial funds, but we're also raising awareness and using our platform to allow these organizations to get in front of a new audience, tap into new volunteers, new organizers, new donors, and grow their list of supporters and organizers. And so over the past 3 years of this program, we've partnered with 16 organizations across 10 key states. And since 2021, we've raised over $440,000 through the program through over 13,000 individual donations, which is massive. So I just want to take a minute to thank everyone here and all of your teams for everything you've done for this program. You've raised nearly $500,000. for these small grassroots organizations where this money makes a huge difference. We often hear from our partners that not only are these funds crucial, but also being able to reach more people through the sister district community is so huge. It's such a huge benefit to being a State Bridges partner. And these orgs often have a pretty small regional state-based footprint. So being able to create relationships with thousands of new volunteers and donors through the sister district community is really huge. The number of individual donations here is just as important as the dollars. And taking a super quick look back over the past few years, in 2021, we worked with 10 partner organizations from 9 states, and over $168,000 was raised in the inaugural year of the program. In 2022, we had 12 partners in 6 states, and over $212,000 was raised. And this year so far, we're working with 8 partners from 5 states, and we've already raised over $60,000. And there's tons more to come. Lots more to come, 2 more fundraising events in 2023, and so many creative initiatives from all of your teams that we've been hearing from this weekend. And for a little bit about our 2023 partners, this year we are fundraising for partners in Virginia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Arizona. And we're thrilled to welcome back many returning State Bridges partners this year, including New Virginia Majority, who are working to flip the VA House this November and fighting against regressive policies coming out of the state legislature and Governor Youngkin's agenda. In Wisconsin, Citizen Action and Wisdom are working to raise awareness and increase voter participation in the critical state Supreme Court elections this April in Wisconsin, as well as their year-round work to prevent the GOP from gaining a crippling supermajority in the Wisconsin state legislature. In Pennsylvania, PA Stands Up and PA United are doing long-term organizing and deep canvassing all year round in rural and small town Pennsylvania, which helped flip the PA House blue in 2022 and will help us hold those seats in 2024. 1APIA Nevada, whose electoral organizing, voter education, and year-round base building among the AAPI community across Nevada is crucial to keeping the legislature blue. And then last but not least, Lucha and Raza in Arizona, who are working to organize rural communities, rural communities, working class, and Latinx communities across Arizona year-round, to help us gain and maintain critical seats across the Arizona legislature. So a little bit about what they're doing. They're all doing so many amazing things, and we're so proud to support them. And of course, we know that our work would, not be possible without, our electoral gains would not be possible without their year-round on the ground organizing work. And yes, I just wanted to close with a quick thank you again to all of you and your teams. You guys are all so critical to the success of this program. And we're so inspired by the hard work and really creative fundraising and organizing work you are doing. And so excited by the rest of the program for this year. So with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Gaby.
Thank you so much, Bella. Truly this program would not work without all of you and the incredible work that you're doing. So I just want to second her deep gratitude to you all for participating in that program. So let's see, how are we doing on time? A little short. Cool. We are going to run through a few. Do you have a question? Yeah. So the question was, do our Bridges partners know each other and work together? They all know each other and they work together. But Yes. But I think that there are additional opportunities for us to, be supportive of their work together, particularly when it comes to state ledge work, right? And that's the value add that we provide at Sister District across all of our programs, right? We're laser focused on state ledge. And while these organizations on the ground do a lot of different things and they're in contact and community together for a lot of different types of programs, state ledge in particular may be a place where we can all work a little more closely together. So, thank you for the question. If there are other questions, let's hold them at the end. I hope we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. So want to talk a little bit about legislator support. And I think Lorena mentioned, there was a question in the audience yesterday about how we work with legislators once they're elected. And I think Lorena mentioned our Purple District Network. So we'll talk about that in a second. The overarching goal here is to continue to be useful, continue to identify gaps and provide resources to legislators once they're elected, right? We collectively put in so much work, right, to get folks elected. And then what happens? There's a lot of opportunity for collaboration across states, and we're able to provide a value add there. But it's not just for legislators. So again, our goal is always to identify gaps. And as we started doing this work with legislators, we also started really talking and being in community with other organizations that provide progressive state legislators with support. And we saw that there were some gaps there that we could help fill as well. So we'll talk about the state power table. So the goal of the Purple District Network is to do exactly what we were just saying. Make sure that once progressive folks are elected, they have the resources and the community to really succeed in passing the agenda and advancing the progressive agenda that they want, which is why they ran, right? That's why they're in office. And when we were, what this program came about from a lot of conversations with our alums over the years, where we, would get on the phone with them once they were elected and in office for a minute and say, cool, great, now you're in office. Where are the gaps? Are there still places where we might be useful? And what we heard over and over from our alums over a period of years was that their experience as frontliners, and that term just means legislators who are in the most fragile democratic seats, that their experience as frontliners was different than their deep blue district colleagues. And I think Lorena mentioned that yesterday. Being in a purple district is a really different experience, both when it comes to governing and building power within your caucus. Oftentimes the legislators with the most power in their caucus come from those very deep blue districts. So when you're not from those districts, building that power and being on that trajectory of power for yourself can be different. And so we saw that there was a gap, particularly for progressive frontliners. There was no other resource in the country really gathering together progressive frontliners to strategize and share best practices and work together across states, given their very specific context in their district being special, being purple. So that's why we're focused on progressive frontliners. It's, again, really a gap that we're able to fill. There are too many of those folks in this country to just stick them all together into one Zoom room or what have you. So again, based on feedback from the legislators, we've created 3 cohorts based on the broader political context that the legislators serve in. So we have a blue trifecta cohort, a red trifecta cohort, and a divided government cohort. And again, the idea there is to be able to surface the most actionable best practices and ideas. Bless their hearts in California, but if you're a legislator in Georgia, you might as well be from Mars when it comes to, sharing best practices and policy ideas and all the rest with folks in California. So we found that that this cohort approach is really beneficial. Currently, we have about 85 legislators in about 30 states across our cohorts in this program. These are member-driven and member-led convenings. So what we do is we survey our folks early in the year to see what they're interested in talking to their peers and colleagues across different states about. Wanted to share a few of the types of convenings that we've held. And I should say the way that the meetings are structured is that we identify a member of the cohort to lead the conversation. So we're not in there facilitating the conversation. I mean, we work on the agendas together and, prepare the materials, but it really is a member to member knowledge network for the legislators themselves. Wanted to share a few of the topics that we've covered in convenings. Constituent service programs are really a perennial favorite for our legislators, particularly those in red states, red trifectas and divided government contexts, because regardless of the political context in your state, you can run the best in class constituent services program. Lots and lots of really creative ideas that come out of that knowledge network exchange, right? Folks sharing the sorts of things that they do. So everything from, birthday phone calls. We have a legislator in Pennsylvania who calls all of her constituents on their birthday to say hi and wish them a happy birthday, to, a legislator in Florida who texts all of his constituents when there's a road closure due to a storm. Hey, it's blank state rep. Did you know that I-90 is closed today? Like, avoid it. Sending letters as constituents turn 18, welcoming them to being a voter. And that's all on top of course, the action, making sure that folks have access to the things that they need when they reach out to the district office for help. I think governing from the minority is a really interesting set of conversations that legislators tend to want to have with each other, particularly, again, folks in divided government and red trifecta states. Some ideas there and some things that folks tend to want to talk about are ways to leverage the budget to your advantage from a policy agenda perspective, right? Regardless of who is in control of the legislature, the budget will pass, and there's all kinds of stuff in there. And how do you ensure that you're even in a state where only 2 bills may get out of committee, much less pass? How do you try to make sure that some of your policy agenda ends up in the budget and that you take credit for that, right? And that you show your constituents that what comes out of the budget was something that you really fought for and cared about. Other ideas from other conversation points from governing from the minority, especially in divided government contexts, legislators tend to talk about how they're using their executive branch to further their policy agenda, right? What are the sorts of ways that a Democratic governor can move policy pieces forward when the legislature won't? Ways to use boards and commissions as often as relationship building tools between Democrats and Republicans to build those relationships and try to work together more. And then one of my favorites is taking credit for bills that you introduced, but Republicans steal and they end up passing. And a great example of this that I'll share is Sydney Batch shared with us in one of our sessions that she had a bill that she had initially introduced that was then stolen by a Republican and introduced and passed. And when the governor signed it, Sydney sent out an email with her next to the governor as he was signing the bill saying, hey, here's the bill that I introduced, and it's passed and all the rest. And she didn't introduce, or, the wording was accurate, right? I had initially introduced this concept into the legislature, whatever, but she was able to show her constituents that the ideas and policies that she was really fighting for were eventually being, successfully passed. So the last point I'd say is that I think that the policy transfer opportunities between legislators are sort of most profound in the blue trifecta cohort, because they actually have the opportunity to get things done. And we've seen a lot of really great ideas exchanged in these conversations. Bills around one in particular that I remember is menstrual equity for incarcerated folks. There was a bill that passed in Virginia that then some of our legislators in Washington state were really, really interested in learning about and bringing forward. So just a few of the sorts of things that happen in these conversations. Some of our members, again, we have about 85 right now. Some quotes about from our legislators about what they enjoy about this program, and that it really is a kind of it's a unique program to really be cohorting folks out based on their context. I also just want to share about our state power table. As I mentioned, another way that we can be useful is by working with our peer organizations that also work with state legislators to coordinate, right? And to make sure that we're all working together. So we saw a gap in the space as we started doing this work, like, wow, there's no place for us to talk. Like, what is your organization doing for legislators? What's your organization? There was nothing. So we started a table, a national table with co-convened with the State Innovation Exchange and the Pipeline Fund, where we meet every couple months. There's about 12 organizations, including the DLCC, Future Now, CAP, EARN, national organizations that work with progressive state legislators, and we keep each other informed. What programs are you running? What gaps are you seeing? Are there ways that we can work together? Just as an example of what the State Power Table does, a couple weeks before the Dobbs decision, our organizations got together in person in DC to have a strategy session about how to prepare state legislators for the Dobbs decision, where we had legal experts come in. We had Tressa Undem, who's the abortion polling guru in this country, come and speak to us about messaging and polling research, and we shared with each other how we were all getting ready to help our legislator networks navigate the post-Dobbs world. I want to share just briefly our research program. I know so many folks in this room have been incredibly instrumental in helping us bring our research to life over the years. This is a program where we're producing publicly available and high quality research, not behind a paywall. You don't have to pay for our research, but it's publicly available, and that's really important to us. And, we've been running this program for a few years, and I'm absolutely blown away that we've published 41 research studies and analyses, which, it's a massive amount. I have friends. I finished my PhD here at Cal in 2018, and I have friends who are still trying to publish their dissertation papers now from my cohort, and I could never tell them that I've completed and published 41 studies since finishing our program, because they would die. So it's been an incredibly fruitful program. We've gotten a lot done. These are the types of research that we do. And again, we saw a gap in the space. There's certainly political research being done, even at the state legislative level, by consultants and behind a paywall, but not really a big gap of high quality, publicly available information. So these are the types of studies that we do. We had another fruitful year last year. These are the ones that I'll just flag. Also, we won another XP award from the Analyst Institute, which I'm very proud of. I think this was our third one since we started the program. The Analyst Institute is the premier progressive research clearinghouse hub, so to speak. So having recognition from them yet again for the high quality work that we do, I think is just fantastic for the program. Just wanted to share just briefly, one type of research that we've been doing more of lately is secondary research. And I mention it, here are the reasons why we do it on the right there. But really the idea here is that we want to really be translating our work out to the public, right? We want folks to be talking about our research, to really understand what it is and why we do it. And so as an example, I wanted to share one of 5 studies that we did and published last year. And these are large scale studies. And so one was around ballot roll-off, and I'm really proud of this work, not just because I think it plugs a big gap in our understanding about a ballot roll-off, but also because we were able to get some really great coverage about this work. We had coverage from Crooked Media, from Robert Reich, and Mallory and I published an op-ed in CNN about it. And so that's the sort of translation work that we're trying to do. It's all well and good to do this work, but if no one's talking, no one understands it, no one knows about it, that's really, we're not getting the job done, so to speak. So I wanted to just share one of the 5 studies that we published last year. You can see here, and all of this is available publicly on our website, but really identified a huge imbalance between the political parties down ballot when it comes to roll off, right? Where folks vote at the top of the ticket, but not at the bottom of the ticket. And, we looked at 2021, where of course, as we all remember, we lost the House by 633 votes. Turns out that over 60,000 more people voted for Terry McAuliffe than folks down ballot. So if only 633 of the 60,000 people who voted for Terry had voted for our candidates down ballot, we would have held on to the House. We were really intrigued by the fact that Youngkin received fewer votes than his party mates down ballot. And so we were really curious to take a look back to 2012, and we actually found the exact same thing every single year going back to 2012, where it's absolutely routine for Republicans down ballot to receive more votes than the top of their ticket, and the opposite being true for us. And so, as you can see here in the 10 battleground states we looked at, our folks down ballot in contested races where they're both a Dem and a Republican running, we experienced roll off about 80% of the time. They only experienced it less than 40% of the time. So, and again, this is just, a way we were able to get some coverage from this work. Really important stuff. Now, only have a few minutes left. So just want to cover the one final piece in the prong of educate and empower that we're really focused on, I think this year and next year in particular, which is the power and promise of states. And I was really encouraged by the fantastic fireside chat that Lala held with Anat Shankar-Osario yesterday, right? Where I think Anat's thinking on these pieces, of course, has been, instrumental in how we approach this work as well. And I think there's a lot of resonance in what she said. And really the goals of this program for us are to really increase the understanding among our progressive voters about the power and promise of states, right? Not just the bad stuff. I think this is kind of a theme we've heard throughout the weekend in various ways. It's the going back to we can't just be against stuff, we have to be for stuff. Maybe it's also let's bring the good news about Democrats, but really, taking the opportunities and the gains that we made last year in state legislatures to tell the story of how everyone's lives are better when Democrats control our states. And again, we're trying to do exactly what Anat said. I love that she said this. We're trying to create habitual down ballot Democratic voters. That's what we're trying to do by telling this positive story, by making the positive case about state power. There's sort of 3 prongs about how we're thinking about this work. Elevating the idea of progressive state power among thought leaders, among the general public, and then doing some research to understand what messages and frames work best for our voters. This is not a thoughts and minds exercise. This is really about encouraging those 60,000 Terry McAuliffe voters, encouraging 633 of them to vote down ballot. So, this is just a little bit of background on why I think this work is so important. You may have heard me talk about some of this in the past. I think that, progressives have generationally overinvested in the idea of federal power, federal advocacy, federal litigation as a tool to achieve the policy goals that we want. And I think that we've sort of all collectively understood over the past few years, everyone sitting in this room understands that we have to focus on states too. But the problem is that structures in the world follow ideas, right? And if we want a strong set of institutions to support progressive states, we also need to get right in our minds about why the work is important. And part of that is telling the story of how good things are and can be when Democrats and progressives control our states, and broadening our imagination, and not just focusing on the terrible regressive work of Republican-controlled legislatures, but really understand, sharing a vision of the world. I think, as Anat puts it, people want to join, that people want to join up with, right? I think it's really important that the idea of neoliberalism is, in fact, a failed set of ideas. And there is a post-neoliberal progressive worldview that is emerging. What we need to do collectively, and part of this work, is to make sure that states are included in that post-neoliberal progressive worldview. And there's a tremendous opportunity there, because there are not a lot of efforts currently to really focus on state power and the power and promise of progressive states. So we really have an opportunity here. So just a few initiatives that we're working on in this space. Hopefully last year you were able to join us for some of our State Power Series events that we held in partnership with Crooked Media and Vote Save America. We had some really incredible panelists who we're able to engage in this, sort of joyful conversation about states and the ways in which state power can be leveraged for good. And so, that was I think, a really powerful set of conversations and a really great series. Thought leadership, this is something that we just, do in the background to make sure that we're doing what we can to communicate out the ideas and the value of states. And then just to share a couple of new initiatives, really excited that we have a partnership with Teen Vogue that's going to be coming out. Our first piece is actually with Lorena, coming out really soon, on historic firsts in our state houses. So really taking the opportunity to identify those incredible historic firsts among our state legislators, really focused on women, people of color, LGBTQ folks from non-traditional backgrounds, and really lifting them up and telling their stories. And then another that I just want to share is some work that we're doing with the Roosevelt Institute, which is a really incredible think tank around this idea of post-neoliberal progressive worldview, and how we can include states in that emerging worldview. So much more to come on this, but that's a few of the initiatives in that program. So I think we have maybe 1 minute if there's one question. Oh gosh, I'll let Mara, if you want to.
Yes, so the role is proven now. And is there other way around? So if the sister district is working on certain state legislatures, how does it affect voter turnout in this district? Can we count on it to increase? Do you have any idea?
So is your question is about how our work increases voter turnout? Yeah. So, well, I mean, certainly through our electoral program, that's the whole goal, right? When we work with candidates, and Taylor just gave us a great presentation about the ways that we talk to voters directly and encourage them to get out and vote for our candidates down ballot. In the non-electoral space, that's the goal too, right? We're trying to raise the visibility and the importance of state legislatures to our voters, right? To progressives and Democrats. who may vote at the top of the ballot, but not at the bottom of the ballot, through, the sorts of narrative change work that we're doing, through the research work that we're doing, and through, of course, through our State Bridges program, where I think Bela mentioned, one of the main criteria that we use when we're choosing partners in the State Bridges program is we ask them directly, how do state legislatures fit into the work that you do? How do you organize around state legislative candidates, issues, advocacy? How is state legislative work and building power in your state's legislature critical to how you see the progressive future for your state? So hopefully through all of those ways, we're increasing voter turnout for our candidates at this level of the ballot.
Actually, when the state legislature is getting better voter turnout, does that translate to the congressional statewide?
Oh, yeah. So you're asking about sort of the, if votes at the bottom of the ballot help turn out. Yeah, a little bit. They do, right? I'd say the research on that is, it's not overwhelming, but there have certainly been cases where votes at the bottom of the ballot have, tipped the scales at higher up on the ballot. But it's typically the other way for us, right? As I showed on that slide, typically we have ballot roll off as opposed to what the Republicans have, where, 3,000 more people voted for Glenn Youngkin. 3,000 fewer people voted for Glenn Youngkin than voted for Republican state legislators. So they have what you're talking about baked in, right? Where their bottom of the ballot does seem to help the top of the ballot, but we're really fighting a roll-off game. And I think Anat spoke to that yesterday about how we need to create habitual down ballot voters, because it really is a habit. And we tend to roll off the ballot much more than Republicans do. Okay, well, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.